All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to No Final Bell. It is episode 60. Finally,
Yeah,
got to 60 episodes. Wow, we're getting old.
yeah,
But of course, before we talk about anything AEW wise, we have NWA Hard Times.
yeah. So we will be starting off with the pre-show, and then we will work to the main show. There were four matches on the pre-show, with the rest being on the main show. We start off the pre-show with a number one contenders match for the television championship. So it was a contest between Big Strong Mims and adorable Anthony Andrews, one half of the Country Gentleman, with AJ Kazana. Mims beats Anthony Andrews to become the number one contender to the television championship. He will be facing the winner of who he will be facing whoever won the NWA television championship match between Jordan Clearwater and AJ Kazana. So we will get into who won that, by the way, which I'm kind of surprised though that they had it on the pre-show. But regardless, then we have a interesting little, I guess you could say, like Forbidden Door kind of like uh, thing here. The Wildcat Sports Tag Team Championships were on the line as the team of Buku Dao and Jay Spade took on the Miserably Faithful, and they retained. They beat the Miserably Faithful, as I kind of figured that would happen. Wouldn't have made a lot of sense to have a international championship uh, title change, but I mean, to be fair, AEW did the same thing. But AEW's done it before, so it's not entirely like too out of the. But regardless, the Wildcat Sports Tag Team titles, Buku Dao and Jay Spade retain. Then we have a very interesting. So we've seen Team War in the past in NWA, but up until Hard Times 3, we have never seen a hardcore Team War match, which basically there was nothing really like too different between a regular Team War match and hardcore Team War. The only major difference is that, like, oh yeah, you can use weapons. So, but with that said, Anthony Mayweather, JTG, and Da Pope beat Jack Dane, Mercurio, and Anthony Taylor in Hardcore Team War. So initially it was supposed to be Mercurio and, or it was supposed to be Magic Jake Dumas with Mercurio and Jack Dane, but Magic Jake Dumas went down with I believe they said it was an ankle sprain, something like that. And so Anthony Taylor of the what tag team again? The it was the old team that Rush Freeman used to be in, but regardless, Anthony Taylor, um, the Ill Begotten, uh, Anthony Taylor of the Ill Begotten stepped in for Magic Jake Dumas, and but they didn't get the job done. So, and then yes, the pre-show, which I personally don't really agree with having it on the pre-show, but regardless, television championship, we're gonna crown a new champion, and boy did we ever! And I had a feeling that that was gonna be the outcome. Um, but regardless, Jordan Clearwater beats AJ Kazana to become the new NWA television champion. So that's one of like two for Idolmania Sports Management. because, we already have Scion as the national champion. We now have Jordan Clearwater as the television champion. So later in the night, we have to determine whether or not Scion will retain, or if Dak Draper becomes the new champion, and then we have the main event. Will Tyrus actually be the one to get it done? We will talk about that. We start off the main show with a Voodoo Queen casket match between Max the Impaler and Natalia Markova, and the result kind of shocked me, but that same breath, it kind of didn't shock me because I figured that, like, you know there was no way they were gonna put Max the Impaler in a casket. So yes, with that being said, Max the Impaler did beat Natalia Markova in that Voodoo Queen casket match. And then we had another bit of Forbidden Door business, I guess you could say, with the MLW Openweight Championship being defended. Davey Richards taking on Colby Carino. And I gotta admit, there were a lot of times during that match where I thought Colby Carino might actually get it done, might actually become the MLW National Openweight Champion. But ultimately, Davey Richards was able to beat Colby Carino to retain. Um, Next up, we have we had quite the rivalry brewing between these two individuals. We had Question Mark 2 versus Question Mark in a mask versus mask match. Who is the real Question Mark? Who is, who's going to be the Question Mark? Who's going to basically carry on that legacy? And then who's going to be the one to. So, Question Mark 2 beat Question Mark in a mask versus mask match, revealing that it was Rodney Mack, which we knew all along. There's no surprise there. Um, Next up, the NWA Junior Heavyweight title. Kerry Morton versus Homicide, the rematch. Will there be a different result? As last time they faced off against each other, Homicide picked up the win. But this time, Kerry Morton is your new NWA Junior Heavyweight Champion after he used the Koji Cutter on Homicide. He beats Homicide with Homicide's own move. It might be the first time that's ever happened, to tell you the truth. I can't really think of any other time in the history of pro wrestling that a match has been won where somebody used their opponent's finisher. It might be a first. I don't actually know. But regardless, congratulations to Kerry Morton for becoming the NWA Junior Heavyweight Champion, following in your father's footsteps, as Ricky Morton has won that championship before. So now Kerry Morton carrying on his father's legacy. Next up, in what was originally supposed to be Nick Aldis versus Odinson. Unfortunately, Nick Aldis did get suspended, and I do believe he actually all like just left altogether. Um, so if you've been following along, originally he gave his notice to the NWA. Then it turns out that like he was suspended or something along those lines. I don't exactly know the whole situation with Nick Aldis and the NWA. All I know is he just wasn't there for Hard Times, and the match originally advertised was Nick Aldis versus Odinson, but it changed to Odinson basically coming out. He's like, "Hey, I don't have an opponent unless somebody wants to step up and challenge me," which is what happened. Who came to answer the challenge but the Thrillbilly Silas Mason, who actually beat Odinson. Um, then we have the first of three tag team matches, or I guess you could say on the main card, the first of three. So this tag team match was for the NWA United States Tag Team titles between the Fixers and the Spectaculars, and as to be expected, the Fixers did beat the Spectaculars to retain. Fixers rule. Next, we have the NWA National Championship, Cyan versus Dak Draper. Will Dak Draper be the one to dethrone Cyan? No. Cyan retains, and as was kind of to be expected, the real question comes, though, how long will Cyan actually hold that championship for? Because it's safe to say that under Austin Idol, and now that he's there with Idolmania Sports Management, I don't think he's losing that championship anytime soon. Next up, we have the NWA Women's Tag Team titles, Pretty Empowered versus the team of Maddie and Missa Kate. Um, During the match, though, Maddie left Missa Kate high and dry, and Missa Kate ended up taking the pinfall. So Pretty Empowered beat Maddie and Missa Kate to retain. Then we have a very interesting matchup that has been building for weeks. EC3 invading the NWA, controlling his narrative in the NWA, taking on Tom Latimer. Um, but the match ended in a very unexpected way. So EC3 was getting on the microphone, saying a lot of stuff to attempt to get under Tom Latimer's skin, up until the point where he started mentioning his wife, Camille. And that's what pushed Tom Latimer over the edge. He finally hit EC3 after EC3 goaded Tom Latimer to hit him, and it ultimately blew up in EC3's face, which is exactly what EC3 wanted. Tom Latimer blew up, and then after everything had happened, he's like, "I'm so sorry. I got overcome with emotion. I didn't mean to choke slam the rep and get disqualified. I didn't mean for this to happen." You know, basically, like, you really feel for Tom Latimer. He did. EC3 pushed him into that deep, dark state that he's pretty much kept hidden. You know, he EC3 brought out Tom Latimer's demons, which is exactly what EC3 wanted, and so Tom Latimer got disqualified. Then we have the NWA Tag Team titles on the line. The number one contenders, Hawks Aerie, versus the champions, La Rebellion. Will Hawks Aerie be able to do it in their hometown of New Orleans, or at least in their home territory of Louisiana? Will they be able to do it? No. La Rebellion beat Hawks Aerie after using the Mist to retain the NWA Tag Team titles. And then in the co-main event, I guess you could say, triple threat, the first of two triple threat matches to determine for titles. So one in the men's, one in the women's. This was the women's triple threat between Camille, Chelsea Green, and Kylan King. And the real question, and I guess the real test, was going to be if Camille could actually overcome the odds and retain against two very formidable opponents in Chelsea Green and Kylan King. And sure enough, Camille, the Brick House, was able to overcome the odds. She beat Chelsea Green and Kylan King to retain. However, Kylan King was not a part of the final decision, and it's been eating away at her. So it's safe to say that Kylan King is gunning for Camille once again. And I think this time, if and when they face off against each other for the women's title, I think it's safe to say that Kylan King will be the one to dethrone Camille. And, because so far Camille has been that one time champ, and I think that her one time reign is going to come to an end at the hands of Kylan King. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is main event time for Hard Times 3 in New Orleans. The big main event. Trevor Murdoch, the champion, defending against Matt Cardona and Tyrus, who is cashing in his lucky 7, relinquishing the television championship. He relinquished, and who they had win it was Jordan Clearwater. Will Idolmania Sports Management rule the NWA? Will Tyrus finally cash in on his big moment that he failed to capitalize on at NWA 74? Will Tyrus become the world's champion? Yes. And much to a lot of people's disappointment, Tyrus became the NWA World's Champion, defeated Trevor Murdoch and Matt Cardona. Um, yeah, so here's what I'll say about it. I'm willing to give it a chance because, not for nothing, I kind of looked at it like, and this is before I had even really started getting back into NWA. When Trevor Murdoch was the champion, I was looking at it, I'm like, really? They pushed this guy to be the world champion? But after a while, I started, like, getting behind it, and I'm like, you know what? Trevor Murdoch, he's a he's a good he's a good guy to have as a champion. Like, he works. And even just in general, like, it made sense for Trevor Murdoch because he did it to basically cement his legacy and to basically remember Harley Race because Harley Race trained Trevor Murdoch, or at least helped train Trevor Murdoch, so it made sense for Trevor Murdoch to ultimately win the world's championship in memory of Harley and just to cement his legacy. But Tyrus, on the other hand, he is somebody that, like, a lot of people looked at as, like, he doesn't really scream main eventer. And even then, this is pretty much like Billy Corgan's pet project. Tyrus is who Billy wants as the forefront of the NWA right now. And a lot of people are tuning out because of it. Like I said, me personally, I'm willing to see what happens with Tyrus being the world champion. But honestly, it's not looking good right now for the NWA because even Billy Corgan's comments, he's like, hey, I want this. I want to see Tyrus versus Matt Cardona versus Trevor Murdoch. If you don't want to see it, don't watch the NWA. Billy, I hate to say it, but you probably shouldn't have said that because now a lot of people are going to tune out of the NWA. So, I mean, I get where he was coming from because he wanted that major exposure, considering Tyrus is on such a major network like Fox News. He wants that media attention of him as the world's champion, and, like, he wants to get more eyes on the product because so many people have Fox News and everything. But Yeah, overall, I don't think it was a great business move for Billy. Um, at this point, I don't know what the future holds for NWA going forward, especially now that Tyrus is the main guy and the main, I really don't know. Um, but that's hard times. Now let's take it over to AEW, which should be much better talk.
I know. I mean, it's not that I wasn't like interested in the talk with NWA. It's great seeing NWA, having great pay-per-views and whatnot. But
It was great up until the final moment. I will say that.
right, all right. So we get on to the first match of Dynamite. It's the acclaimed FTR Fate versus Swerve and Our Glory and the Guns. 8-man tag team match that kind of
Big
just
eight
got,
man tag team match.
yeah, big. It was a good match. I mean, for the start of Dynamite, but ultimately, it's a team that everybody expected to win. At the end of the day, the acclaimed FTR beat Swerve and Glory and the
Top
Guns.
guys, scissor.
So ultimately, it was a great match to start off. Dynamite, honestly, I really do think that they claimed and Swerve and Glory are going to have a great match, but FTR is definitely in the fold. They want the AEW World Tag Team
Yeah.
Championships, and it makes you wonder why didn't FTR just win in the first place to face off against the acclaimed for the AEW World Tag Team titles?
But
And here's the
I
reason
keep going
why.
back to it.
It's because ultimately Swerve and Glory is going to lose, and then you're going to see the split
You're going to see the
between Keith
penultimate
Lee.
breakup of Swerve and Our Glory, which, if you ask me, though, I think the big payoff should have been that they break up at Grand Slam, but that's not what happened. Um, and ultimately, but the way I look at it is like, you mean to tell me that a pay per view like Dynamite in Grand Slam couldn't have a big payoff of Swerve in Our Glory,
Right,
like ultimately just, you know, dissolving?
right. Who
But,
knows?
eh,
But
I
either
feel like
way,
the big payoff is going to be at the pay per view, which, like, I can kind of
right,
understand, but at the same time, it's like it doesn't make a lot of sense to have Swerve in Our Glory like break up at the pay per view. You should have done it weeks ago.
right,
Like, but and then with that, you could have had FTR because, especially during that match, FTR was teasing like there was definitely some tension
I
rising
know,
in that 8-man tag because
right.
like the acclaimed and FTR like bumped into each other and they're just like we know we can't fight but like you guys have something that we want.
Yeah, I do think that they're going to face off against each other eventually, but who knows when that's going to be. Going on to the next moment here, MJF goes on Pardon My Take podcast and says he doesn't need anything extra to go out there and beat John Moxley. Says he respects him because he had to work his ass off to get where he is today. But can MJF be the next great generational talent and become the next AEW World Champion? I want to say he can, but it wouldn't shock me if Stokely Hathaway has something to say about that.
Oh, he certainly had something to say.
But then again, here's why I say MJF um, being the world champion makes sense because say if it is ultimately Ethan Page that wins the all, he's with the firm. Stokely Hathaway, the whole premise of Ethan Page and Stokely Hathaway and MGF makes the most sense heading into a future storyline. And I think that it could ultimately end up, with Ethan Page facing off against MJF at, Winter is Coming in Garland, Texas. And then, you know, possibly having MJF, of course, beating um, Ethan Page for the World Heavyweight Championship, but who knows what will really truly happen. It wouldn't even shock me if somehow Stokely Hathaway costs MGF the world title, and then there's like some feud going on with the firm and MGF
I
and
never
stuff like
thought
that.
about it that way, but that's a very distinct
Because
possibility.
we'll talk about it. Actually, it goes into our next point here. Stokely Hathaway says that MJF is dick riding Moxley. Hence, yes, he did actually say dick riding. I know on TNT, who was trying to cut out the whole swearing and thing,
Well, it's more so Warner Media Discovery that's
but
trying to,
apparently it's all right to say
but
dick riding Moxley to get to the
huh,
world title without him around. It says he doesn't need his best friend, and at Full Gear he will see him in hell. Thoughts? That's where I'm kind of getting at. I really do think that Stokely Hathaway is going to bring the devil down to hell. And in a sense, what I mean by that is I really do think that Stokely Hathaway is going to try to get the firm involved in this match against MJF and Moxley. And ultimately, I think it's going to cost MJF the world title. I think John Moxley is going to retain. But then again, I could be wrong. I don't know what's truly going to happen. I do think that the firm's going to get involved in this match one way
I
or
look at it
another.
this way though. You cannot possibly derail MJF's momentum and have him lose at Full Gear.
Oh, I agree, but we'll happen to see. Um, it's ultimately going to be interesting. But speaking of Ethan Page, he faces off against Eddie Kingston, and actually, to no real big surprise here, beats Eddie Kingston to advance in the AEW
Can we
World
just
Title
talk about that
Eliminator
finish
Tournament.
though? Of an ego's edge off
Off the top
the
rope,
yeah.
yeah, that was crazy. Um, poor Eddie Kingston, he hasn't really done anything. Can he just please pair Ortiz and Eddie Kingston together? Like, I ultimately, if you have nothing for Eddie Kingston as a singles competitor, at least put him in the tag team division with Ortiz. Like, do something with him because Eddie Kingston, ever since he got that big win against Chris Jericho, hasn't done anything. He hasn't been on
Yeah,
TV much. Ultimately, you haven't pushed him. You kind of more so derailed him than not with that win over Chris Jericho. And it's sad to see because I don't think that a talent like Eddie Kingston, who, gets that kind of win, should just not be seen on television as much. So,
it's kind of sad when he did more, in a sense, in NWA than he's currently doing in AEW. In a sense, he did like a little more in like he actually was. It seemed like NWA actually gave him like more screen time in a way than AEW, but you know it's still actually no, it's not too early to tell because when Eddie Kingston like first came in, they were giving him like pretty much they were in a sense like pushing him to the moon, like
right.
almost within like a few months of him signing, he's in a feud with Moxley for the world title. Like, how do we go from that to like now he's in the world title eliminator tournament, but he's actually like not going to get far in the tournament.
Who knows, honestly. I will say this now: Ethan Page does deserve it. Will he get to the finals? I'm sure he will. Um, I really do think that Ethan Page and Brian Cage will be in the finals. I think you're going to see them at Full Gear facing off against each other. It would be cool to see Brian Cage and Embassy, you know, seeing him go after the AEW World Championship because I think it's very well overdone and would be well deserved if he was to actually be the world champion. I think that would be like Tony Khan, tipping the hat, like, hey, this is what happens when you stay patient enough, and eventually luck will go your way. But Then again, would you think that there may be more upside with Ethan Page facing off against MJF than Brian Cage? Who knows? I think it makes a little bit more sense that it's Ethan Page because it is ultimately MJF that does win the World Championship. The firm and MJF makes more sense than the
Yeah,
Embassy and Brian Cage and MJF. So I think that's the route that they're going to go. And ultimately, it's a great way to push Ethan Page, who I think is well deserving of it.
yeah.
Um, so there's not much to talk about this one.
Well,
Wardlow,
okay.
okay.
No, here's the talk that could happen. It was supposed to be an open challenge for the TNT title. What kind of open challenge is Ari Davari? Like, let's be real.
Well, it's all right because we'll talk about this more in my theory of what could happen at Full Gear. Wardlow faces off against Ari Davari, and he beats him to retain the TNT Championship. And then after the match, he calls out Powerhouse Hobbs, and then Samoa Joe beats down Wardlow after he says he will take every title in this company. What does this mean as he holds up both titles?
I think what it means is
What it
Samoa Joe got
means,
offended by the fact that Wardlow is like, oh, I'm going to take every title in this company.
no, what it means is I think you're going to see a triple threat match for the TNT Championship, which I would be all
I would be
for.
absolutely okay with that. And
And
if
I
that's
think,
the case, give it to Samoa Joe.
but ultimately, could you see this match being on the buy-in? Because I could. I hate to say it. I know that's a shitty thing
Yeah,
to do, but I think you have a majority of the matches for
yeah, a
the
lot of the
show.
matches are on the main show. But, like, if you ask
And
me,
if that ultimately ends up being the buy-in match, I'd be okay with it because I mean these three men like could brawl and beat the living crap out of each other
yeah.
for the TNT Championship. And ultimately, I think Samoa Joe holding both the ROH World Television title and the TNT Championship would be all. Yeah, I would be all for it. I think Samoa Joe
Well,
screams a great champion. I
yeah.
think he's somebody that can bring actually better prestige to the TNT Championship.
Well, here's my thing about it. If you're going to put that match at Full
You know
Gear,
what? I hate to cut you off. You know what would be hilarious? Samoa Joe getting involved with Blackpool Combat Club and then the whole thing with Samoa Joe. Regal! Give me John Moxley! Give me my AEW World Championship.
give me Moxley or give me my AEW World Championship.
Yes.
Well,
Give him have him with the whole thing with Regal because it would make all the WWE fans that jump ship from WWE to AEW freaking laugh their asses off because that would be nostalgia.
it would, yeah. But, or do the whole thing, Regal, get better security. But, now I
But
forgot what I
ultimately,
was
I really do
ultimately
think
going
that
to
this,
say.
that's exactly what will happen at Full Gear. I think they'll face off for the TNT Championship. I mean, you gotta put that on a Full Gear.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was going to say. If you're going to put that match on Full Gear, I'd, I'd actually replace the TNT title match. I'd actually swap matches. So, like, hear me out. Put Jade, and I know I'm probably gonna catch a lot of slack for this, but personally, I would put Jade Cargo and Nyla Rose on the buy-in, and then substitute that triple threat TNT title match if you're gonna put it on the card for Full Gear. Swap out Jade Cargo and Nyla Rose to the buy-in, and then have the TNT title triple threat on the main card.
All right. Speaking of Jay Cargill and Nyla Rose, they will face off at Full Gear for the TBS Championship. Thoughts? Um, hate to say it, Jerry Cargill, I think this is the right time for Nyla Rose to beat you for the TBS championship. Um, but then
See,
again,
I'm in the camp that thinks Jade Cargill will reach 50-0 before she ultimately loses.
and the real question is it safe to say that this is actually Nyla Rose or Jade Cargill's actual like legit competitor
This
for the
yeah,
TBS
this is
championship?
probably like the most legit threat that Jade Cargill has had to her title in a long time. Like
Because Nyla Rose is somebody that could probably legit, beat Jade Cargill for her championship.
she absolutely could, but that's just not how they're gonna book it. I know how this thing is gonna play out.
Right. So, going forward, Saraya and Britt Baker are face to face finally. And Saraya, unfortunately for Britt, she is 100% cleared. Congratulations to Saraya for finally being 100% cleared. She never thought that day would ever come, as was so full of emotion and said that AEW is her house. Britt speaks, then asks if there is anything more fickle than their fans, and
Fickle.
what does it mean that she's cleared, and asks if she still knows how to wrestle, which I thought that was kind of hilarious. Then Saraya has been going after her since day one here. Britt says she's built AEW from the ground up, and that superstars like Saraya wanted to come in here.
Notice how she said superstars.
Um, it says pride turns to resentment when she can come in and say it's her house, saying she doesn't remember her laying down a single brick. It says she's everything she wished she was and left her house and walked into hers. Speaking about Saraya, leaving her house being WWE and going into Britt Baker's house of AEW and saying she has some balls to basically say that it's her house when she didn't lay down one single brick to build it from the ground up. Um, Britt says we don't take walk-ins and says, "Bitch, make a damn appointment." Saraya says it's cute to be on her pedestal because she was handed everything from Tony Khan. Oof. Was only in front of the camera for 3 years, but she's been in the business a lot longer than she has. Speaking about, Saraya talking about being in the business a lot longer than Britt Baker. Says Britt doesn't know what it takes to be a star, and Saraya has paid her dues for the business. It says Britt
That
doesn't
she has.
know what it takes to be one because she started revolutions before they were a trend, and when wrestling was even a twinkle in Britt's eye. Says she's been everywhere, and now she's in front of a ungrateful bitch. She's battled a drug addiction publicly, given her neck and career for this business, and says it doesn't have and that Britt doesn't have a clue to do what it doesn't have a clue what it takes, and that this will be the biggest match of Britt's career, and they will face off at Full Gear. Thoughts? It is ultimately great to see Saraya finally back in the wrestling ring
Yes.
after so many years because of neck issues and having to basically retire early because of the neck problems.
I
Um,
mean, she's in her, I believe, 30s now, or maybe even late 20s.
so I am ultimately grateful to see that she will be back, and Britt Baker better watch out because Saraya is now going to be that top bitch in AEW.
Yeah.
And I ultimately, it won't shock me if eventually she will be the AEW Women's World Champion. I think that AEW is going to be I really do think that the women's division is going to run through Saraya, and
Yes.
ultimately, I really do think that that's a great idea to do because look at what she did in WWE before her injury. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, I really do think that she can have that kind of success, if not
Oh,
bigger,
absolutely.
in AEW. And ultimately, I think it's a move that AEW has needed. They needed somebody like Saraya to lead that women's
Yeah.
division.
I look at it this way too. you definitely have to give her the world championship before she. I'm just talking, hypothetically, if she has to retire again. I'm not trying to like push bad luck on her. I'm just saying, in general, you have to give Saraya the world championship before like she ultimately calls it quits, you know, for good.
Right. So, um, Jay Lethal faces off against Trent Beretta, and again, Jay Lethal has been on a tear as of late because he beats Trent Beretta. And Jeff Jarrett showed up after a phone call and says he signed Jay Lethal to his first contract from Impact, and he showed machismo right from the start.
Machismo.
Was a Grand Slam champion, has taken over promotions around the country, and says Satnam Singh is a legit giant and not some guy wearing red skinny jeans and produced by the Banana Nose Circus. Basically, talking about uh, Adam
Here,
Scherr, Braun
yes.
Strowman,
Here's to
and Triple
you, Braun
H.
Strowman and Triple H.
It says he's a 1 in a billion.
What's next? He's gonna take a dig at WWE again with um. Oh, I was gonna say because a lot of people have been saying like, oh, he might just take a dig at Triple H for making Theory lose his briefcase or something like that. I, you know, I know that people have been saying, "Oh, watch Jeff Jarrett take another dig at WWE this week." It's possible. I mean,
And it says that Satnam Singh is a 1 in a billion and only Indian born NBA player. It says he is throwing out the challenge.
yeah.
Um,
So at Full Gear,
Full Gear, we are going to see a tag team match. It is going to be Sting and Darby against Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. Ultimately, I'm not too mad with a tag team match like that. I think it makes a lot
I
of
mean, but
sense.
like you got to look at it this way too. It's renewing that age-old rivalry between Sting and Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, and ultimately, I'm not I'm not mad at that. I really do think that this tag team match is going to be a lot better than what people think is going to be, and ultimately, I think that's going to be a great match. I mean, Sting and Darby bring it. Jeff Jarrett still has something to, still has a lot left in the tank at damn near almost 50 years old.
Damn near 60 years
Okay,
old.
damn near 60 years old, whatever. And then, Jay Lethal, we all know what he can still bring
Oh
at
yeah.
the on the table.
You want to talk about a generational talent? That's Jay Lethal.
So ultimately, I think this match is going to be a banger of a tag team match at Full Gear. Um, So John Moxley vows to take the fight to MJF and bring everything out of him in their Full Gear match. Thoughts? Better watch out, MJF, because I'm pretty sure he's a man of his word, and he's going to. This is going to be a dogfight of a main event.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's just a regular match. I really do think that there should be added stipulation.
Oh,
Um,
I agree.
Ultimately, there's only one added stipulation kind of match of all Full Gear. We'll talk about that, but ultimately, this one is going to be a great main event for the AEW World Championship. Um, so the Elite look to tease their return for Full Gear. Thoughts? I'm all for it.
I'm
Um,
okay with that.
I don't know what way, shape, or form they're going to show up at Full Gear, but ultimately, I think they're going to have some say. And
I
who
mean,
knows?
honestly, I look at it this way about the Elite. They were wrongfully suspended in that whole scuffle from All Out because, not for nothing, the whole thing was Punk's fault.
What if they come out and say, you know what? We want those titles that we never really lost. What if they just ultimately just like add on the AEW Trios the AEW World Trios Tag Team titles and win them back at Full
That
Gear?
would be
I
something,
would be
man.
fucking all for it. I really would, because
That would be
what
something.
better way to have a rematch at fucking Full Gear? That would
Yeah,
be amazing. I, do it. Do it,
yeah,
Tony.
I
Pull the
agree.
freaking plug and have the
What
World's
I could
Trios
see
Tag Team
happening then,
titles on the line
what
and
I could
having the Elite win them back.
what I could see happening with that then is Death Triangle comes out, they're cutting like a promo or something in the ring, and they're like, "Oh, we don't have any legitimate contenders for these trios titled or like whatever," and then lights go out, and then you hear the elite, the elite, and then yeah, exactly.
In Newark, New
You
Jersey.
you
Oh
hear
my God!
you see Nick and Matt and well,
They're
okay, no.
back!
If any, well,
Hmm.
what they would do in that sense is they would do the the Young Bucks super kick party, and then next thing you know, you hear Omega's theme there. Everybody would lose their minds over Omega returning, and and even the Bucks returning, like just the
I
elite
don't
in
know.
general.
I just think that there's going to be something that's going to be happening, even if they get involved in some kind of match or something. But ultimately, I think that Tony Khan should just pull the plug and have the rematch happen at Full Gear.
Yeah,
I mean, why not? So, um, going forward, there's not really much to talk about this one. Jamie Hayter beats Sky Blue. I mean, of course, you want to have Jamie Hayter looking hot heading into her world
oh,
title
she's looking hot already.
Good God. Um, of course, you want Jamie Hayter to look strong heading into her women's, world championship match. So,
Yeah, you want to carry the momentum, basically.
yes.
Yeah.
So, of course, we already talked this one through. Sting and Darby fail out on the face after Jay Lethal Full Gear thoughts. Ultimately, it wouldn't shock me to see Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett beat Sting and Darby here. It really would not.
I feel like that's the likely scenario because you want to keep Jay Lethal's momentum going, but at the same time, Sting is like coming back for a match, and it's like you really don't want him to necessarily lose.
Right.
But honestly, I could see Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I think I
So
could too.
and even then, it's like Sting's not gonna really like it's not gonna hurt Sting to take a loss.
No, it probably wouldn't.
It's not even really gonna hurt Darby to take a loss. Like
Probably not.
those two are gonna be able to bounce back from a loss.
Right.
So
So Brian Danielson and Sammy Guevara. Of course, I didn't write it down here, but it was a
it
two
was
out
two
of
out of
three
three falls.
falls match. Fuck you, Sammy Guevara. What kind of bullshit do you have against Brian Danielson here? You were freaking stiffing him the whole goddamn match like you had something against
Which is
Brian
funny
Danielson.
because he bitched and moaned that Andrade El Idolo was doing the same thing to him before in a match or whatever, which is what started the whole like backstage uh bull crap with those two. So like why you gotta be a bitch about it, Sammy?
Because just the way it was very hard hitting. I'm grateful that Brian Danielson beat the living shit out of him after all of it, but like just Sammy, that man is fragile. I hate to say it. Nothing. I know he's 100% cleared and back and all this other stuff. That Jesus, man. I know Brian Danielson wants people to bring it to him, but you don't have to go that far.
Yeah, you don't have to go that hard, Brian. Like
but
relax a little
but
bit.
I'm grateful that Brian Danielson did beat Sammy Guevara in this two
Well,
out of three
okay,
falls
so
match.
let's go over how we even got there. So first, Sammy Guevara gets himself disqualified for the first fall, which goes to Danielson. Then I believe Sammy got a fall, or maybe it was a clean sweep from Danielson.
No, it was 1-1.
Okay, so yeah, Sammy Guevara got that pin back or got that fall back, and then it was tied 1-1 with the final fall being deciding the winner. So, which ultimately it was Bryan Danielson, and well deserved because yeah, like Jason was saying, like fuck you, Sammy. Why are you, what
Why are
is
you basically beating his ass for real in the whole entire match? Like, Bryan Danielson, I'm sorry. I
I
kind
know
of
he
wish he
loves
was
that kind of
able to say,
competition,
I
but
wish he
like
was able to actually say it on live television, because that would have been great to say, I'm gonna kick his fucking head in, and actually like legit fucking like can get it into him, because you know I hate to say it, Danielson can beat you down for real too. And I'm shocked that Bryan Danielson didn't try to give him some receipts. But there was some receipts in that match. I hate to say it. Sammy Guevara got knocked down a couple different times, especially that one moment. I was looking at it, I was like, oh damn, that's a fucking receipt if I ever saw one. You know, you know. I hate to say it, I hate to expose the business, but usually when wrestlers are, accidentally stiffing for real, usually what it means by receipt is usually they do it back and be like, "Hey, settle it down a little bit, bitch.
most
You're gonna get
infamous one that
you're
I
gonna
can
you're gonna get your receipt here."
most infamous one that I can think of is Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar. Braun hit Brock with a unexpected knee to the face, and Brock didn't take too kindly to it. Brock just popped him one right in the face and told Braun to calm the fuck down or slow the fuck down. So
Right. So we get on to Rampage. There was a lot more talking and setting up things for Full Gear in here and there, more than there was about
actual
matches.
in ring
But
action.
it's all right. Jungle Boy Jack Perry is to go up against Luchasaurus, not just in any ordinary match. It's in a steel cage match. Ultimately, because you want anything you can to
Love me a
keep
good
Christian
cage
Cage.
match.
You want Christian Cage to be left out of this match and
Yeah,
not interfere. Great way. I think this is a great match to keep Christian Cage out
right.
and
But
not get involved in the
like
match.
I said, I love
Luchasaurus,
me.
Jungle Boy wants Luchasaurus
Yeah,
1-on-1. He wants nobody to try to interfere in this match. Ultimately, I hope this is it between Luchasaurus, Jungle
I
Boy,
hope
and
so
Christian
too.
Cage, because Jungle Boy, I think he deserves a title opportunity. Go after the title, whether it's Orange Cassidy's All Atlantic Championship, whether it's the TNT Championship, whether it's eventually the World Championship. Do something with Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Ultimately, what I would be totally fine with is I know the whole thing. Well, I don't know if you want Luchasaurus to team back up with Jungle Boy. Here, this is what I totally fine with. I would be okay with Luchasaurus turning on Christian Cage, and then Christian Cage kind of taking the sling off, giving him the kill switches. Like, I never needed any of you guys. I can be the lone wolf. I can do this all on my own, kind of thing. You know,
Mm,
ultimately, I could see that happening too. Because ultimately, I mean, he's kind of had that whole sling thing on for a
yeah.
while. So ultimately, I think this is the ultimate.
Well,
I think this is the best payoff is to see Christian Cage be like, I don't need any of you guys. I don't
the
care if
thing
you're
about it,
together. I can go off and do my own damn thing. I don't need any of you guys.
the thing about it is he has at All Out he had a torn bicep, I believe. So, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure by now it would be like healed.
Yeah, I think so too.
So,
I mean, who knows? Um, so Death Triangle are talking backstage. They say we gotta take every opportunity that stands in our way and win in any
by any
by any
means
means necessary.
necessary.
What does that mean?
It means that even if they got to resort to underhanded tactics like Pac is with that hammer for the ring bell.
They'll do it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, later on tonight they will be putting those AEW World Trios Tag Team titles on the line against. Here we are, returning Darius Martin,
Yes,
Top Flight, and AR
AR
Fox.
Fox.
You know, ultimately, it's cool to see, but it's kind of like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
it's like
it's cool that Darius Martin's back and everything, but like,
yeah,
this is
but
just like
why
you kind of just throwing this match like together. Like, what? Like, Top
you could
Flight's
have just
back,
had like
cool,
you could have just
and
had
then
Top Flight come back in a tag team match. You didn't have to include AR Fox and be like, oh yeah, let's have them challenge
I mean,
Death Triangle.
I guess it's a different opponent for Death Triangle for their AEW World Trios Tag Team titles, honestly. So it's cool. I mean,
Hmm.
something different to see.
Now, let's hope and pray to God that Darius Martin is able to stay healthy.
Yeah, it would be nice to see.
Now, granted, I know this last injury wasn't entirely his fault. He just happened to get into a really bad car accident that kept him out on the shelf for months. But even just in general, like, please, for the love of God, can Darius Martin stay healthy?
So we got into our first match of the night on the Rampage, and it's Brian Cage facing off against Dante Martin in the AEW World Championship Eliminator tournament. And I guess to no surprise, Brian Cage beats Dante Martin here. I mean, it would have been cool to have seen Dante Martin win, but ultimately, it makes a lot of sense after you announce the trios tag team title match. And I think, like I said, I think it's going to be Ethan Page and Brian Cage facing up against each other at all full gear. You know, to determine the number one contender for either MGF or John Moxley at Winter is Coming.
I don't think that's what. I think the likely uh, scenario for the finals is Ethan Page and Ricky Starks.
I don't think so because you
Well,
know
no, see, because you have to put Ricky in the finals, like because why else would he even be in that tournament if you didn't plan on going at least somewhat far enough with Ricky Starks?
I mean I get it, but what's the payoff with MGF and Ricky Starks facing off against each other
Well, I
for the
mean,
world title? Like
but
I just want to
well,
say
it, I never said that Ricky Starks had to win the finals, and even then, I know he's more than likely not going to win the finals because ultimately the big story that they're going to tell is MJF and Ethan Page.
so.
So,
Let me guess. Like Brian Cage would face off against Ricky Starks this week on Rampage, and then it's
well,
what
no, no.
Bandito and
So,
Ethan. Well,
so what it is Ricky Starks and Lance Archer got moved. So essentially, what it is more than likely they're gonna have Ricky Starks and Lance Archer on Rampage, and then it's ultimately going to be uh, like I don't know how they're doing it, but it ended up getting moved, so I don't really like know too much, but I would assume that like Rampage is gonna have Lance Archer and Ricky Starks, and then right after Ricky Starks faces Lance Archer and beats him, more than likely Brian Cage will come out and it'll be like a situation of oh Ricky Starks isn't like ready for
now
the challenge
is
or
the
whatever.
Eliminator Finals match? Is it a Fatal Four Way or is it a singles match? I'm
I'm
trying
pretty
to.
sure it's a singles. So yeah, because Bandito and Brian Cage are going up against each other this week.
Bandito and
Or
Brian.
yeah,
No, Bandito and Ethan
yes,
Page.
that's right. Bandito and Ethan Page are going up against each other. So yeah, more than likely, like I said, what's going to happen is it's going to be Ricky Starks and Lance Archer. Ricky Starks is going to beat Lance Archer, and then. Uh, but what I could see them doing is like, oh, Ricky Starks beats Lance Archer, but then because of the disadvantage, Brian Cage beats Ricky Starks, and then at uh, Full Gear in the tournament finals, it's Ethan Page versus Brian Cage.
Well, what would make a little bit more sense is, yeah, of course, having rookie stars, compete on the same night, but do different things, Dynamite and Rampage. I could see it being like Lance Archer and Ricky Starks on Dynamite, and then Brian Cage versus Ricky Starks on Rampage, and then ultimately
It
being
could
Brian,
be
because you kind of have to have it that way anyway if that's the case,
right.
and then have Brian Cage and I think Ethan Page, at Full Gear. But
Well, in that case, if you're having Ricky Starks and Lance Archer on Dynamite, and then having Ricky Starks and Brian Cage on Rampage, which this week Rampage is going to be live, then at least it gives Ricky Starks a little more rest and a little
yeah,
more time.
exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
So then Ricky Starks would be able to beat Brian Cage.
Oh, that's right. It wouldn't be the same. It would be 2 nights after the fact, since it's going to be in Newark, New Jersey, a
Yeah,
live
live Rampage.
Rampage. So yeah, I mean, it could be possible that he competes on Dynamite and then also on Rampage. So who knows? Um, Tiger Style, Lee Moriarty wants some gold and looks like Hook is ready to answer the challenge. Thoughts? Could we see Tiger Style and Hook face off against each other for the FTW Championship? Yeah, I think so. Will it be this week on Rampage? Probably not, but hey, still something, even if you want to have a buy-in or something like that. Honestly, I mean, it's still something. Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
It just sucks that Hook can't be on like the main show and do more in AEW. I just think that resorting him to like the buy-in or pre-show and then not barely using him on AEW television is like kind of derailing him as FTW champion. Hate to say it, it's kind of like a once in a it's like once in a blue moon. Oh, here's Hook. Like, is he not a full time wrestler? Is he a part timer? Like, we need to know what's
yeah,
truly
like
going on with
it's.
Hook. Like, you're using him for only special occasions, and it's kind of like stupid.
I was gonna say if that's the route that they are going with Hook as like a special attraction, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like Hook should be like somebody that's on the active roster that like you know for God's sakes he's a freaking champion, albeit it's not a sanctioned title, but
Right,
you know he's still a champion in the company. It's like use him as said champion, have him defend.
right. So, House of Black looked to be revived by Julia Hart. Thoughts? Um, I don't know exactly when they're going to come back, but what if it's ultimately, it would be totally fine? What would be totally fine with me? Having the Elite against the House of Black at Full Gear for like a number one contenders match. Like whoever wins then
Yeah.
faces off against Death Triangle. That could also be a possibility to have happen at Full Gear too.
Well, I mean, just think about it this way too, because Death Triangle, or yeah, no, House of Black got eliminated early on in that trios tournament. So
So who knows what could happen? Ultimately, Full Gear I think is going to be a great pay per view, and anything could happen.
oh,
Anything is
absolutely.
possible. So it's up in the air. Um, Only Tony Khan knows exactly what's going to happen with Full Gear, and we just gotta wait back and see what's going to happen. Which, by the way, it is this Saturday. Definitely looking out for it. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah.
Um,
Although it's
I
a
plan
little
on I plan on watching it all. I mean, I
yes.
do have to work at 7:30 on a Sunday, so I could ultimately watch it all. Yeah, maybe having a little sleep afterwards, but it's all right. I mean, I think it's
Well,
well worth it.
it's gonna be a big pay-per-view special anyways because not only on Friday do we have a live Rampage that is before Full Gear, we also have Overdrive from Impact Wrestling. So,
Yeah, so
like, the way I look at it is, why does Impact have to compete with a live
so
Rampage?
I mean, of course we'll talk about it, but programming note, we're probably not going to be talking about AEW Dynamite and Rampage next week. We're probably just going to still watch it, see the build into it, but ultimately we're just going to be talking about Full Gear and Overdrive. It's going to be just a pay per view special. I don't know if we're going to call it pay per view special, or we might just call it 61. I don't think we're going to just call it pay per view specials anymore. I think we're still going to have them regular shows, but it's going to be just talking about, um, just the pay per views and what we'll head into, going forward into the next pay per view, which won't be until next year in like March, February, March, around that time. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, back on point here, Bandito faces off against Roosh in a pretty great match. I mean, it wasn't maybe the most spectacular match in the world, but Bandito and Roosh, did have an all right match. I mean, but ultimately, in the end, Bandito beats Roosh with the help of John Silver's distraction. That made absolutely
Johnny
no
Hungy.
sense. I don't understand. I guess, okay, you know what? No, it does make sense because of everything with Dark Order and Andrade Family Office.
Well, not
So,
not actually not the Andrade family office, but more so La Facción and Gobernables.
right.
So
Yeah, because you have that, and then you also have everyone that's, the Butcher and the Blade and stuff
well,
like that.
okay, so yeah, I guess ultimately it would be the Andrade family office.
Yeah, so even though most of the people that were on it is,
Are starting to like
you
fizzle
still
out of
have,
that faction, yeah.
you know, technically, the firm is got a lot of members. Technically, it's also Matt Hardy and Private Party, even though you haven't really seen them either, which
Yeah,
honestly
they're more
sucks.
on like
But
dark and stuff.
all right, so going on to the self-proclaimed TBS Championship Open Challenge,
Yeah,
Nyla Rose faces off against
Kayla.
Kayla Sparks and beats her. And then Jade Cargill comes down and beats down Nyla Rose as she wants her title back. Man, this is getting severely personal between Nyla Rose and Jade Cargill, and I think this is ultimately going to be a good match. I think it's going to be something that won't be spectacular, but I think it's a match that definitely it's all right to have happen. I mean, Nyla Rose hasn't been too big ever since losing the AEW Women's World Championship, but ultimately, I think that I can see her as a TBS champion. And we go on to the main event. Orange Cassidy and Lee Johnson face it off against each other for the All Atlantic Championship. Um, Honestly, most of the matches on Rampage weren't very spectacular. Hate to say it, but um, in the end, Orange Cassidy again retains as he beats Lee Moriarty to retain the All Atlantic Championship. Um, don't know exactly when Orange Cassidy is going to lose the All Atlantic Championship, but
I
right
don't even
now,
know if he even is going to lose that title, really, and even who the right opponent would be.
ultimately, I'm okay with the challengers and him putting on the title on the line regularly because it makes that title look, pretty prestigious as a mid card title in AEW. Gives Orange Cassidy, some light at the end of the tunnel and actually, utilizing him the way that he should be on AEW. So,
Yeah,
ultimately, this is going to conclude this episode of No Final Bell. Make sure to follow us on social media at Tinkle Sports. Um, Make sure to follow our channel at Tinkle Sports Entertainment. Like, comment, subscribe on all future content, especially this episode that's coming, that's going to be released soon. If you don't want to just watch this show, We do have Sunday morning tinkle every Sunday at 9 a.m. Of course, Out of Turn 4 is on hiatus, but that one is also typically every Tuesday at 5 p.m. As always, everyone, we will see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone.